98. Today we're talking about how to use Winlink with handheld radios. We're going to be doing a bunch of demos walking through how to connect a variety of different handheld radios into your Winlink system and get them up and running. So hopefully the demo gods are with us. Today I am joined by my esteemed colleagues, David W0DHG, Dan NR6V, and Scott Cam6 RFB. I'm Chris Mattia. My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. And let's get into today's topic. So David, if you can pull everybody else down, if you have access to Winlink, send us a Winlink check-in. Send it to all four of our call signs. They are W0DHG, NR6V, KM6RFB, W6AH, and our tactical address, WaveTalkers. Use the standard Winlink check-in form, and in the comments section, let us know what is your favorite handheld radio and why. Once you fill that answer in, be sure to paste it into the comments, either on YouTube if you're watching us live on YouTube, or Facebook if you're watching us on Facebook, or if you're here inside of our live audience, inside of our Zoom session, then go ahead and let us know in the chat inside of Zoom. We'd love to know what your favorite handheld radio is and why. Let's walk through that Winlink check-in. So, oops, wrong screen here. Let me go to this one. That should be my walk-up. There we go. So now we've got our copy of Winlink that's set up here. What you're going to do is you're going to come up here to the upper left-hand corner of your Winlink. You're going to click on the new message button. And if the demo gods are with me, it'll open a new message. There it will. You're going to put in all four of our call signs right there. And actually, you're going to come over and just hit Select Template. Under the Template Manager, you're going to click the little plus next to Standard Templates. You're going to come down here to the General section, give that a click. And you're going to come to the bottom of that section. You're going to find the Winlink check-in.txt. Now, why do you want to send a Winlink check-in using this form as opposed to just sending a Winlink message? Well, what you'll see is at the end of our show, we're going to bring up a map, and we're going to have a map showing where all of your check-ins have come in from around the world. And if you use this Winlink check-in form, you'll appear on the map. So we're going to go ahead and give that a double click. What it should do is it should open up your web browser of choice. This is where you're going to fill in all of that information. You're going to start up here at the top where it says date and time. Go ahead and click inside of that field, and it's going to say, it's going to set the current date and time for your computer to the current date and time for this form. That way you'll appear on the map when we do all of the filtering for that. So I'm going to say okay for that. Here's the to field. This is where we're going to enter in all of our call signs, and you should find those in the chat. They're being entered both on YouTube in the live chat as well as here inside of the Zoom. Our call signs are W0DHG, NR6V, KM6RFB, and our tactical address is WaveTalkers. You're just going to separate each of those with a semicolon. In the from section, this is where you're going to enter your call sign. Your station contact name is your first name. Then over here for initial operators, let us know if there are any additional operators that are sitting there watching the show with you. Just list out their call signs right there. Under the session type, this is going to be an exercise. So go ahead and click on exercise. For the service, let us know if you're sending us in via shares or amateur radio. Let us know the band that you're sending it in for. Now, if you're sending it in via the internet, you're just going to use the telnet option. But if you're going to send this in via HF or VHF, then go ahead and select that radio button. And when we do the map, we'll be able to highlight all of those calls that are coming in via RF, which is really a cool thing to be able to see on the map. Under the session type, let us know how you're sending that traffic in. If you're going to send it into the internet using Telnet, or if you're going to use Packet or Pactor or VARA FM or VARA HF, go ahead and select the correct radio button here. Location, this is just the location where you're currently at. Your latitude and longitude should be automatically filled in for you based off of either your grid square, or if you've got a GPS connected to your Winlink station, it'll populate that there. Here's the comment section. This is where you want to let us know what your favorite handheld radio is and why. Again, copy that, paste it into the chat, either in Zoom or into YouTube, so others are able to see what your handheld of choice is. Hit the submit button. You'll get a couple of pop-ups here inside of your browser. As soon as you get through saying okay to all of those, it will make your browser will appear blank. At that point, you can just simply close your browser, hit the little X in the upper right-hand corner. All of those data should be entered here into the message for you. At that point, you just want to hit the post to outbox button here in the upper left. You should see an increment in your outbox. It should go up to 1 at that point. Then you come over here to your session, select the type of session that you're going to check. I'm going to use Telnet for this one. I'm going to hit open session and then just hit the start button. And if the demo gods are with you, you should get your message sent out. I'm checking and I'm seeing a lot of check-ins coming in from all over the world. Later on in the show, we'll check back here and we'll map all of these check-ins that have come in. But in the meantime, let's get back into the rest of the show. So there we go. So this is episode number 98, and we're going to be talking about connecting a variety of different types of handheld radios to your Winlink station in order to use an HT to send Winlink traffic. So when you're doing this, you're pretty much always going to be operating with VARA or with Packet, and it's always going to be VHF or UHF, and it's always going to be using the FM modulation mode. For all of your handhelds, that's pretty much what you're going to be operating with. So with the Packet side, we'll start there. All Packet radio requires a terminal node controller of some kind. Now, these are broken into 2 different categories, either external or internal. If we look at the external TNCs or terminal node controllers, there really is, there's a variety of them out there on the market, but the most common ones are the ones by Cantronics or the Pactor modems. Now, when you start thinking about using one of these with a handheld, I've got a couple of examples right here. So this is the Pactor, or this is the Cantronics. This is the Packet communicator. It's the 9612, and this is the Pactor modem. Now, you'll notice as soon as you look at this, these are much larger than your typical handheld radio, right? Physically, they're much larger. They're also almost as expensive, if not as expensive or more so than pretty much every handheld that's out there on the market. I mean, you're going to pay a few $100s for a Packet TNC, or you're going to pay starting at $1,000 plus for a Pactor modem. So more than likely, this is not going to be the way you're going to go when it comes to working with a handheld radio. So we can pretty much kind of like take those off the plate at this point as something that you're going to be operating with. There are a few radios out on the market that do have internal TNCs, a few HTs that are on the market that have this capability here. Now, on all of these, what you're looking for when you're looking at the specs is you're looking for something that says in the specs that it has a built-in TNC or terminal node controller. There are a few of them out there. There are not many. These are usually your higher end HTs that have this. Now, some of them will say they've got built-in APRS. Now, that is not a guarantee that it's got a built-in TNC, but it's a pretty good bet. You might be able to get a radio that says it's got built-in APRS to be able to work with this. Not every single one is going to do this. Another thing that you're going to be looking for in the specs is you're going to be looking for the KISS term, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. It may also say KISS 12. For instance, on the Kenwood D74 and D75, these have built-in TNCs in them. And when you turn them on and you get them set up to be able to do packet radio, you'll press a couple of buttons and you'll bring up the TNC here on screen. I'll walk through that process here in just a little while so everybody's able to see that. For the most part, though, when you're talking about working Winlink with a handheld, more than likely you're going to be doing VARA FM, and this requires having a sound card connected between the radio and your computer. Now, there are a handful of your handheld radios that have an internal sound card, but again, these are your very high-end radios. Think the Icom ID52. Think the Icom 705, the Kenwood D74, Actually, no, the Kenwood D74 and the D75 have built-in TNCs. They don't have the internal sound card. Think about the Yaesu, the 5D, the FT 5D. Those will have an internal sound card, and you'll be able to do this just between the radio and your computer. However, pretty much across the board, what you're looking for are these that are going to have an SDR. They're almost all going to be an SDR handheld. So it's a pretty rare thing to have in a handheld. Pretty much everything else is going to require an external sound card. And these fall into a couple of categories. There is the Digirig, and I've got one of those set up here. We'll be looking at a demo of that in just a second. And the other one, sorry, it's a little bit of juggling here. The other common external sound card is going to be the USB Signalink. Now, both of these are relatively low cost. For instance, the Digirig, here I'll switch over to the overhead here. This is the size of a Digirig. They're pretty small little external devices, and this is the actual size of a Signalink USB. Now, when you connect these, you're connecting them to your computer via a USB cable. And then on the other side of them, you're using some specialized cables to connect over to your radio, whatever that radio happens to be. The Signalinks typically are right around $100 to a little bit more. The Digirigs typically run in the $50 to kind of $75 range. So these are definitely the lower cost model option. They're really nice. They're super small. They work with a variety of different radios and radio types. The Signalinks also, when you open them up, David will talk a little bit more about this. There's jumpers inside so that you can set the Signalink to work with each different specific radio, but you are going to need custom cabling to go to make everything work for this. So when it comes to your external sound cards, this is an option that will work with every single handheld on the market that will do analog FM. Basically, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be connecting through the handheld speaker mic port. So if your handheld is capable of having an external speaker mic or an external headset, then you can use an external sound card and do VARA FM with that particular radio. When it comes to how you connect the radio to your computer, you have a couple of different I/O options. The first of all is Bluetooth, and we'll see some examples of this. These are pretty much only on your most premium radios on the higher end brands. So when you're talking Icom, you're talking Kenwood, and you're talking Yaesu, it's usually their flagship model that they've included a Bluetooth connection between the radio and your computer. This works extremely well once you get it all set up, and I will demo that with a Kenwood D74 connecting via Bluetooth to my laptop, and we'll use that to send some traffic here in a few minutes. But this is a little bit harder to find. The nice part about this is there are no cables. You have your computer, you have your radio, you turn them both on, you make sure the settings are correct, and you send your Winlink traffic. It is super easy. Matter of fact, yesterday, once I got my Kenwood back up and running again, I went for I walked over to the grocery store. I did some shopping. On the way back, I stopped at a local park. I pulled my Kenwood D74 out, set it on the park bench. I pulled my laptop out, I connected the two, and in less than a minute, I was able to send Winlink traffic. I mean, it is super easy to be able to do this once it's set up. It really is a premium type of feature, and you only see this on the top end radios. The next is USB. Now, this is typically a feature that's in the more upper class radios. So all the different manufacturers will have some sort of radio that has a USB port on it that is capable of doing either VARA or Packet. However, there's a little asterisk there on the USB port because not all USB ports are created equal. Some USB ports, for instance, where's my radio? Where is it? It's in here somewhere. For instance, the Yaesu FT70D, here it is. The FT70D is a good example of this. So I love this little HT. I love the rugged ability of it. It is really great in hand. It's got really good audio in and out on it. And you can see that there's a data port here on the side. And if I pull the little flap up, I know it's a little hard to see with the lighting there, there's a USB mini port in there to be able to connect. However, this is just for programming the radio. It doesn't push audio in and out of that port. So you can't just directly connect every single radio that has a USB port on it and do all of this Winlink traffic. Some USB ports on some radios are just for charging. Other USB ports are just for programming the radios. You got to make sure that it has the capability to be able to transmit audio in and out of the radio. And that is actually controlled usually inside of the settings that you've got inside of the radio. So you can't just look at the radio and go, oh, this one's going to work in this, that, or the other. You really got to read all of the specs that are there to figure out if it's going to work for you to be able to do the Winlink traffic. The next one is a serial port. Now, someone out there may know of a serial port on a handheld radio. I don't know of any. So if you know of one, go ahead and let us know in the comments what that connection, what that particular radio is. But most of them, when we get into the mobile radios, and we'll talk about those next week. But when you're talking about handheld radios, most do not have a serial port built onto the HT. So this is pretty much one that's just you're not going to find a connection for. Everything else has that audio in-out port, and that's pretty much the most common that's out there that you're going to be doing. So 90% of your radios out there, you're going to be going through the microphone and the speaker port with the push-to-talk in order to make all this work. Okay, if you've been a fan of this show for a while, then you likely have seen this particular diagram before. So here's your radio that you've got, and you're going to be connecting it to your computer to Winlink in order to make all of this stuff work. So this is general, regardless of if you're using an HT or using a mobile or you're using a base station. You need to make a connection between your radio and the computer. And this can be either a physical or a virtual interface, depending on the specifics of the radio that you're using and how it's going to connect to your computer. What's common is you have two lines of communication that you always have to deal with. Out of your radio, you have the receive line and you have the transmit line. And when you're starting to talk about these, when you look at the receive audio, you're always talking about the speaker port out of the audio coming out of your radio has to go into the computer, and that's going to go into your computer's microphone port or whatever the interface is, microphone port. Then you're going to come out of your computer speaker port in order to generate audio out of the computer, and that's going to go into the radio's microphone port. If you're going to remember one diagram, remember this particular diagram, because this is where most people get tripped up when they start thinking about where is the audio going and where is it coming from in order to go in and out of your radio. So once you kind of get that locked in, where you're going into your computer is the sound card. Now, many of you are going to say, hey, Chris, I've got a built-in sound card in my laptop, in my computer. Isn't that going to be just fine? Well, if you're into pain and suffering, you can try and make this work. However, when you're trying to do Winlink, like if you're just doing it as a test, yeah, you can get this to work. However, when you're actually out in the field and you're trying to send Winlink traffic, you don't want to have to reconfigure all the audio within your system. Sound cards built into the computers are also not optimized for talking directly to your radio. There's also, it's missing the control circuit that's in there as well, and which is your push to talk. And you're going to say, hey, Chris, but my radio, it's got that Vox feature. Yeah, again, if you're into pain and suffering, you can try and get this to set up to work with Vox so that when your computer makes audio out of its speaker, it automatically keys your radio in order to transmit it. The problem is getting everything to balance properly and getting good transmission of audio to come out reliably out of your system. That ends up being a real challenge when you're trying to use this method. So a better option is to use some sort of USB connection that goes between the radio and the computer. Now, when you start talking about mobile radios, they will oftentimes have a data port, but more than likely, you're not going to have a data port directly on your handheld radio. You're going to need to go through an external USB sound card. Again, this is either that Signalink or the Digirig, and there are a few others that are out there on the market, but these are the most common ones that amateur radio operators are going to be getting. So your sound card interface is going to sit in between your radio and your computer. And these two blue wires, the two blue lines right here, those are the unique cables that you're going to need to go between your radio and your sound device, whatever it happens to be, your sound card, and then between your sound card and your computer. And that is another one of the gotchas that you've got to be able to deal with, making sure that you have the exact right cables that work between your radio, your interface, and then between your interface and the computer. Huge mix up a lot of times. Not all cables, just because the cable looks the same, it doesn't mean that all of the pins inside are all wired. It doesn't mean that all of the right resistors are inside of those wires in order to make all of the different keying and transmission levels to work properly between the devices. So it is a little bit more complicated than just grabbing any old cable off the shelf. You're going to go into your computer's USB port at this point. Now, this is the place where 99.99% of the problems exist when you're trying to get Winlink working between a handheld and your computer, or really any radio and your computer, because all of the audio running through your Windows PC is going to all run into the Windows Sound Control Panel. And you need to have the correct drivers or USB audio codec in order to work with your particular sound device that you're working with. You also need to have all of the levels set correctly and a bunch of other settings that are in there that are going to be specific to the interface that you've chosen. You need to make sure that all of this stuff works exactly right in order to get your audio to transfer onto the next step. And anytime you run a Windows update, which, as we all know, happens on a very regular basis, the likelihood that something is going to get screwed up here inside of your Windows Sound Control Panel is extremely high. I spent hours and hours yesterday working through various different problems, trying to get all of these demos to work again, specifically because a Windows update came up and it completely messed up all of my connections for VARA. And so literally nothing worked. And it took me all day of going through. I ended up calling David, W0DHG. We spent hours on a Zoom call together, tracing through exactly where the update was. And oftentimes, if you run a Windows update, you got to let that update completely run and then run it again, because you oftentimes find that there's been a second patch that fixes something that broke in the first patch. And you got to make sure that all of those are run again, and then go back through all of your audio settings, because a lot of these will get messed up. And I'll show you where those show up here in just a few minutes. Once you come out of your Windows Sound Control Panel, that's when you're going into either your VARA FM, or if you're using Packet, you're usually going into UZ7HO sound modem at that point. UZ7HO sound modem is an excellent utility specifically for troubleshooting, and David will talk a little bit more about that later on in the show. Once you come out of whatever this interface is for whichever mode you're going to be using, that's when you're going to be connecting directly to Winlink. So this is your full signal chain, and more than likely, your problem is either a physical connection over here between your radio, your interface, and the computer. It's usually somewhere in here that you've got a wrong pin, a cable is not fully seated. Those are some of the most common problems that you've got. Then the vast majority of the problems are right here in the Windows Sound Control Panel. And then after that, it's just a few settings that are inside of either your VARA or your sound modem. So once you deal with all of those problems, Now we're going to talk about some radio specific settings that you need to make sure that you're setting on your handheld in order to get your handheld to work properly with Winlink. And the first one is that you have to manually set the frequency that you're going to be operating on to try and connect to either the other station or into an RMS gateway. On handhelds, when you're dealing with VARA FM and you're dealing with Packet, there isn't cat control that's set up within Winlink to automatically control the frequency for your particular radio, because most of these radios don't have cat control built into them. So it's not a feature that's really built in. So you manually dial in the frequency into your radio to make sure that you're on the right frequency. The next thing is, and this is the place where I see most people screw up also, you have to set your squelch to 0. Now, let's think about what the squelch is doing. The squelch is a feature inside of your radio, so you don't have to hear all of the static, the baseline static that is going on your radio. So your radio is nice and quiet. However, the signals that we're sending are all those little tiny digital blips and blops that are going back and forth between your radio and the other radio. And if you have your squelch set up at any level, you're going to be cutting some of that traffic out. So you always want to turn your squelch all the way down to 0, and then you'll be able to transmit your data via VARA or via Packet much more effectively. Now, does this work if you have your squelch turned up to, say, 1, so you don't have any audio coming out? It does work, but you're going to reduce your signals. You're going to reduce the transmission and the effectiveness of your signals. So as soon as you take your external, your cable, and you plug it into the radio, especially on most handhelds, you're going into that microphone speaker mic port. You're not going to hear the audio coming out of your radio anyway, so don't worry about it. Turn that squelch to 0 so you get all of the audio signals that you want to have going through to do your communication, and life will be much better for you. The next is make sure that your radio is set to the correct side. Many handheld radios will have an A receiver and a B receiver, so you can listen to 2 different frequencies at the same time. Most of your handheld radios will only do data transmission, or they'll only primarily work doing this kind of transmission on either the A side or the B side. It's going to be unique for your particular radio. So make sure you're going to have to get out the manual and figure out which is the right one for your particular radio. Audio has to be routed to the proper port. So for instance, on the Kenwood D74, when I go to do that with Bluetooth, I have to make sure that all of the audio coming out of the radio is being routed into the Bluetooth port, or all of the audio is being routed, my TNC is being routed into my USB port. Likewise, you have to make sure it's routed into the microphone or speaker port. That varies by settings that are inside of your radio that you have to go in and figure out where those are located. And not all radios are going to do this. You're going to just have to go through your particular setup and figure that out. Next is make sure that your audio levels are set correctly. I'll show you how to do this on the Baofeng. For instance, for many of these radios, when you've got your VARA FM screen up, you'll have a little VU meter, and you want to adjust the volume on your radio speaker to make sure that you get the level set to the correct level. And I'll show you exactly what that looks like here in just a few minutes. If you're doing Packet using an internal TNC, you need to make sure you turn that TNC on within the radio. Again, I'll show you what that looks like. And then there might be other radio specific settings that are unique to your radio that are not going to be something that is in this generalized list. So it is going to take some testing on your part to be able to figure out what those settings are in order to make it work. And that brings us to this. You got to practice. You got to practice and practice and practice with your setup. Make sure that you're practicing with your radio and your particular computer, and take detailed notes all along the way. Once you get this up and running, you want to go back and you want to take screenshots of all your different settings. You want to know what all of your settings are on your radio, what things that you set. Try and make sure that you're able to take another set of make those settings so that you can delete everything and you can turn them back on so that you know exactly what those settings are. As a matter of fact, one of the ways that I went through and I did this, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the Baofeng demo first because it's working right now. And more about that here in just a second. So let me switch over to the overhead cam. And I want to walk through the very first demo here is walking through this entire signal chain. So I have my Microsoft Surface that's sitting here, and it's got my copy of Winlink up and running. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do one more quick check to make sure that I've got all of the check-ins. And yeah, I've gotten a bunch more check-ins that are coming in here. So I'm going to download those while they're going so I don't have to do that over the connection here. So what I have in my setup here, out of my USB port on the Surface, I have an audio interface. And in this I'm sorry, not an audio. This is just a USB port splitter here for. So it's an Anchor. It just has USB-C ports. It's got USB-A ports on it. And notice I've got a bunch of ferrite beads that are on this. Your USB cables connected to your computer are a notorious place for getting RFI into the overall setup. So more than likely, you're going to need to put some ferrite beads on whatever that interface cable is in order to make sure that you're not getting too much noise that's going through. I'm just going to keep downloading via Telnet in the background to make sure I've gotten all of these check-ins in at this point. Once you come out of that, this is basically just to adapt the port. So on my Microsoft Surface, I have one USB-C port, and I need to be able to get out to my other different devices. So next, you're going to go the connection all the way over to your interface. So here, the cable that I happen to have is off the Digirig. I have a USB-C port on the Digirig on one side. And then the cable that I happen to have is USB-C to USB-A. So that's why I need to have the little Anchor adapter. If I had a USB-C direct to USB-C, I could simply plug that directly into my computer. That would be great. Notice this cable here also has the ferrites on it. Now, this is a cable that's from Digirig, and they do these pre-made cables. They have the ferrites already installed on them. They're really nice cables, and notice that it's a very short cable. You want to make sure that the cabling is as short as possible to cut down on any RFI that you've got. Okay, so from the Digirig then, now this is where you need the unique cable that's going from your interface over to your computer, over to your radio. And every single manufacturer uses different cable configurations. Digirig in particular does a really good job of making cables. They make a lot of really good cables, and they're all unique to the different radios. So I've got cabling here to connect to, say, my KX3, which is really a great setup. If you buy the Baofeng cables, you also get the programming cable, and it just looks kind of like this. It's only the programming cable is in green, and the radio control cable is in black. And they have cabling that goes for a variety of different radios. This will go to one of the Kenwood or one of the Yaesus that has a built-in data port, and so forth. There's a bunch of these different cables that are out there, and they're all specific to the radio. But notice what we've got going on here is we're going out of the Digirig and we're going into the microphone speaker port on this radio. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on. Let me see if I've gotten all of the check-ins at this point. It looks like I have. Excellent. So on my Surface, let me start back there. Let me go back to walk up in that one. So on my Surface, I'm going to use this setup, and I'm going to connect via VARA FM, hopefully, to my gateway, which is literally just on the other side of the wall. So I'm going to come up here for session type, and I'm going to select VARA FM as my session type. And I'm going to open that session up, and it's going through. I'm going to turn the radio on here. And the radio, when you look at your VARA window, you can see that my audio input is completely pegged over. It's all the way turned up. So if I go back over, I've just turned on the radio, and now I'm going to go through, and let me see if I can get this so that you can actually kind of see it on screen. I'm going to turn the volume down on the Baofeng, and you can see that this little light goes green and yellow. What you're doing is I'm turning this volume in very tiny little increments. You can see we're trying to get that VU meter to be about right there at about 3/4 level. And so some of these are really touchy to get that audio. And so that's the audio coming out of the radio, and it's going into the computer, and it's mapping into the right port. We'll look at what the settings all look like here in just a few seconds. But now we're actually all set up. If I look over here on the Baofeng, it's on the correct frequency. So it's on the 145.030 that my gateway is set up on. And I can come over to my VARA FM session, and I'm just going to hit start. I've got it all set up to send normal Winlink traffic here. And I'll hit start, and you can see as I switch over here that the radio is going in and out of transmit mode. If we look over here into the VARA window, it's making a connection over to the gateway. You can see the VARA traffic that's going back and forth. We had a successful connection, and it walked through that entire process together. So this does work. However, I will say, working with a Baofeng is really frustrating sometimes because there's all kinds of little gotchas that you have. So for instance, the cable that plugs into here, sometimes that doesn't fully seat, and then you don't get all of the audio working back and forth properly. Now, if you want to set up a Baofeng completely from scratch in order to make it work with VARA, I have a Baofeng here. Let me just make sure this is the right one. Okay, good. So let me switch back over to here. This is the overhead, and I'm going to zoom in a lot tighter so you can see. So this particular Baofeng is programmed with a variety of different settings that are configured here for a whole bunch of things. So your radio might have a variety of things set up in it already. Let me show you how you walk through and reset this radio to make it ready to do Winlink. So what you're going to do is you're going to hit the menu button, and you're going to use the little up and down buttons, and you're going to look until you find the reset all option. Once you find that, hit the menu button again. It'll move the little tick down here to the bottom to all. You hit the menu, you hit the hit menu. It's going to say source. Just hit it again. It's going to say wait, and it completely resets the radio back to the factory defaults. Now, these are the couple of settings that you need to do inside of this radio to make it work. Hit the menu button again, and notice we start off on the squelch. You're going to hit menu, you're going to go down, and you're going to just drop that squelch all the way down to 0. That's going to be the same pretty much for every radio that's out there. So I'm going to hit the menu again, and that's going to lock that in. Now we're going to go up. Our step is 2.5. That's fine. Transmit power. Now, what you generally want to do is you want to set this down, especially on a Baofeng, you want to set this down to medium power. So just hit or low power. Just hit the menu button and change it down to low, and then enter that in. So that locks in your low power. Now, why use low power on these? Well, these are notorious for not having very good filters in them. So if you're transmitting on low power, you have a much better chance of getting your signal to actually go all the way through and have a nice clean signal. If you need the extra high power, you might be able to turn it on and get it to work, but it really doesn't work in all situations. I'm going to hit the menu button again. I'm going to keep going up. And the next one, there's your Vox setting. Make sure your Vox is turned off. You're not going to use Vox on here, but you're going to come up. The other one that you're looking for is this setting, this TDR. Make sure that the TDR, this is so that if you're going to do the dual receive on the receiver, and if you can turn that feature off, then it really is going to focus in on the A channel. And notice the little blinking light is up here on the A side. So that's where that's going to go through. The last setting, and you really don't have to do this one, but I know it can be a little annoying otherwise. If you just keep scrolling up, you're looking for the voice, and it defaults to setting the voice to Chinese. Just go ahead and hit the down arrow, hit the up, and change that to either off, or if you really want the voice, you can change it to English, and then turn that off. This Baofeng is now ready to be able to do Winlink. So if I go exit, I could type in my frequency 145 030. It's now on the correct frequency. I could pop this out, pull my cable, swap it over to here, and then if the demo gods are with me, it would actually transmit to make this work. Now, I say if the demo gods are with me is because not all of these are going to work right out of the box the way that they come out of here. So you will have to fiddle around with some of those if that's what you want to be able to use. And why am I seeing data coming through? Don't want to do that. Deselect all. I'll check messages, and let me switch back over to here. Okay, so we're going to stop that transmission, and we're just going to go ahead and close all of these settings here. It's actually just talking to my gateway right now, so that's fine to be able to do. Let me walk through a couple of the places where you're going to run into issues, and this is regardless of what computer or what radio you're using. The most common place, if you bring up your Windows control panel, go to your Windows settings, go into the system portion of that. You're looking for the sound control panel. And if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll find more sound settings. And this is pretty much in the same place on Windows 10 and Windows 11. We're going to go into more sound settings. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually open up your Windows sound control panel. I'm going to move this out of the way so we can focus in on the Windows sound control panel a little bit. So when you have this set up, you have various playback. Remember, this is the audio out of your computer, which is going into the microphone port on your radio. And you have the recording, which is essentially the microphone of your computer. So that's the speaker port on your radio going into the microphone port. So this is the audio coming into the computer, and this is the audio going out of the computer at this point. When you plug in your USB device, whatever your interface is, whether it be a Digirig or a Signalink, you're going to get a new sound device that's going to show up in here. Now, with that, I've gone ahead and I've named mine Digirig so that it's easier for me to note. If I double click on that, this is where you can get into the properties. So you can set the name here and you can change the icon. Default, it comes in as a generic icon. This is something that you want to do just to be able to help make sure that it's easy for you to visualize and see. And you want to set this for both the playback and the recording sessions. So within the playback, which is the speaker portion, you want to come over here to levels. Now, if you're using a signaling, more than likely, you're going to want to set your speaker port to be set to 100% or 100 at the value of 100 here. If you're using a Digirig, depending on the radio that you're using, you need to go in and make some adjustments. And if you go onto the Digirig website, you'll find out that what they suggest is they suggest your speakers get set to a level of about 80. And that turns out to be one of the gotchas that I ran into yesterday, making sure that audio level is set exactly right so that it's calibrated. So when you're turning the dial on your radio and you're trying to get that level indicator to get right to 75%, that is going to be what you're looking for. Next is come over here to enhancements, disable all enhancements. You don't want anything from your computer being mixed up into the audio signal that's going into your radio. So just disable all of those. Go to advanced. What you're looking for is 16-bit audio, 4,800 kilohertz or 4,800 or 48,000 hertz DVD quality. So just set that. These are both the defaults here. Spatial sound. Make sure spatial sound is turned off. So those are the output settings that you're looking for. Next is you want to make sure that you don't have the little green, see this green check mark here? That means that's the default audio device. So you want to make sure that that is not checked on your either sound, either your Signalink or on your Digirig. So if it is, you can just come down here to the bottom with it selected and make sure it's not the default device. You can also right click on this and say, you want to actually come up to the one that you want everything to go to, make that the default device and the default communication device. This should not have any green check marks or green marks on it at all. Let's go over to recording. And again, here I have my Digirig. that's set up, and I just double click on it. And this is where, again, you can change the name and change the icon. It just makes it easier for you to be able to manage within your software. We're going to come over here to the listen. Make sure this is unchecked for listen to this device. That's making sure Windows is listening to the device, not your radio, not the computer. That's Windows that's trying to do that. So you don't want Windows listening to this device at all. You're going to come over here, and you do want it to make sure that it's working when you're under battery power. Windows has added all kind of fancy features in here that it'll just turn off stuff to try and help you conserve power. But more than likely, if you're running Winlink, you're going to be doing that on battery power anyway. So make sure that's set. Come up to the next one, custom. This is a big gotcha. This is always on by default. And every time you run a Windows update, it turns this back on. So you got to come in here and uncheck AGC. This is your automatic gain control. You don't want Windows to be doing any adjustment of your signal. You want to do that manually. We're going to come over here to levels. Now, this is a place where you're going to have to figure out what's the right setting for your radio, your interface, your computer to make all this work. On the Digirig site, what they're saying is that your microphone level should generally be set in the 20 to 50% range. So what I found is that 40 tends to work really well for the setup that I'm using right here with these cables and this particular setup and this particular radio. Under advanced, again, you're looking at 16-bit 4800 hertz or 48 kilohertz. And those are pretty much the settings that I use for this particular setup. Now, as you change interfaces, like if you change to a different radio, you may find that those settings need to be adjusted. Anytime you run a Windows update, come back in here and look and recheck all of these settings, because that's going to be a place where you're really going to have some issues. Once you get that portion set up, then you're going to need to make any setting adjustments for your interface. So for instance, if we're doing VARA FM, and I'm going to, again, right now I'm set up for the Baofeng. I'm going to come up here to settings under VARA setup. If you're using a Baofeng, now I got a note from Jose saying that for FM, you should be using the narrow settings if you're using a Baofeng. However, what I've found as I've been testing is if I have it set to narrow by default here, I can't get this to work properly. So I'm not really sure why that is. So I've gone ahead and I've left mine set to wide. That's in there. Let's come back into the settings. Let's come down to the sound control panel. This is where you want to set your audio interface. This is what VARA is listening for within your whole Windows setup. So notice when I named in my sound control panel, I named things Digirig. Look, it's right here in the device input. If I click the drop-down menu, it's really easy to make sure you've selected the correct one. Now for a sound device, for a Digirig, you're going to look for the USB PNP sound device. The Signalink is going to have a slightly different name, and do that. Rename your device in your sound control panel so it's easier for you to figure out. You need to make sure both of those are set correctly. Now, on the Digirig, one of the things that they say specifically in the setup is that you want to make sure that your channel is either set to mono or all of the audio is shifted to the left channel. And that is where the Digirig is actually putting out all of its signal. One of the challenges that I had here is I had this set to both left and right, and I kept getting all these weird audio problems, and I wasn't getting my audio to push properly. And so by shifting it over to just the left channel, suddenly my audio issues cleared up. It was really simple. All right, that's the settings there. Now we're going to come back over here, and we're going to go to the push to talk settings. Now, again, for the Digirig, that is going to be a COM port connection. If you're using other different types of devices, and you're going to see me switch radios here in a second, I'm going to start jumping through a bunch of demos. Some of these you'll have to change to the CAT control. Others you'll have to change the specific port that's there, and then what's the PTT pin that's being used. On the Digirig, again, it's the RTS pin that's used. You need to make sure you set the correct COM port. You do that by coming down to your Windows, right-click on the Windows menu, come up here and go to Device Manager. And when your Device Manager comes up, you're looking for the COM ports. You're going to click on that. Let me make sure that's not right in front of my face. Here's your COM ports. And so for the Digirig, that's a Silicon Labs, and notice the COM port. Just take note of what that particular COM port is set as, because you're going to need to make sure that that's set to make everything work. And those are the different settings that you're working with. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to step through a couple of other demos of a couple of other different systems. So first thing that I want to walk through is I want to walk through, let me bring I'm going to bring this back up. Let me do one more quick check and try and download over a faster connection. Any other messages that are there? And now what I'm going to do is I'm still going to use VARA, but I'm going to use another handheld radio. And the handheld radio that I'm going to use, let me zoom back out here a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see what we're doing. So I'm going to leave the USB chain that's here. I'm just going to unplug that from the radio. I'm going to take the Baofeng, get rid of that at this point. And another handheld radio I'm going to use is the Icom 705. And you're going right now, hey, Chris, come on. That's not a handheld. It is a handheld, and this is how Icom sells it. And the higher end handhelds are all going to work very similar to this. This happens to be the one that I have. I don't have the high end Yaesu. I don't have the ID52. I have the 705. So on my 705, I've gone ahead and I've modded the adapter board in here. So I have a USB-C port on mine. So I'm going to be able to just plug that USB-C cable from the computer right into there. I'm going to turn my radio on. And I need a antenna for this. On the side of the radio, I'm just going to plug in a little DNC antenna into the side of it, so I'm ready to go. So on the 705, one of the things that I've set up on here is my memory. So I'm going to go into the memory, and I've gone ahead and I've gotten a group connected for digital that's in here. When I have that digital group selected, then I already have the different frequencies that I may need to operate on. So I'm on my 145.030 frequency. So I'm all set up on the correct frequency. Another nice thing about some of the higher end radios is they have presets inside of them. So if you go to the menu section, and you go over to the second page, on the Icom radios, they have presets. And I actually have a preset that I've set up for Winlink here. So I have all the settings inside of the radio so that I don't have to go through and remember those each time. I can just come in here, hit that, activate that preset, and the radio is completely configured and ready to go for me. It's a really nice feature that is available on some of the higher end radios. But now I'm actually all set up to be able to do this. I have the radio, it's on the correct frequency. Now I need to switch back over to my Surface and make a couple of setting changes inside of my Surface to make sure I'm configured for doing Winlink or VARA FM. Hit the drop-down menu. I'm going to come up here to VARA FM. I'm going to open that session. Everything looks like it's fine, but it goes, oh, hey, that COM port that you were using before, it's broken. It's not set up correctly, and your port's not working. There's all kind of problems that are going on here. So we got to fix that. We're just going to come over here into VARA. We're going to hit settings. We're going to go first into the sound card settings, and I'm just going to change this to make sure that I'm on my USB audio codec. That is the sound card names for what the Icom uses, and they've already both come in for that. So that's good to go. Now I'm going to come back over here to settings. I'm going to come down here to PTT, and I'm going to change this over to cat control. Now, once I change to cat control, VARA has remembered what my previous settings were. So for an Icom, for instance, a 705, the ID52, like all of these, they're going to have the similar kind of settings. You select the brand of radio, what's the COM port. You can, again, go into the device manager, figure that out. What's the model of the radio, and you have to set the correct baud rate for this particular radio. I know that the Icom is always set to 19.2, and I know what my CIV address is. So that's all good to go. I'll say, go ahead and close. Now, you might say, okay, we're ready to go. Unfortunately, what I found is the way to make sure that Winlink is going to talk properly, once you change radios and you change all these settings, just come back over to your Winlink session, go ahead and close the session, and then launch it again. And now you should get a clean launch that has all of the settings set up correctly for your new interface that you're ready to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit the start. And if the demo gods are with me, if I transmit over, you can see that I'm transmitting out of the 705 just fine. and I'm getting the connection directly into the gateway. It's that easy to just get the thing up and running, and you're able to transmit your data back and forth. Now, I wasn't transmitting it. I didn't send any messages or receive any because there's none in the queue right now for me, but that's really as easy as it is once you get a higher end radio that's set up to be able to do this. I'm going to do one more demo before we jump over to David here. So let me come back over to here. And this time I'm going to turn off the 705. I'm going to take my little antenna here. And now I'm going to disconnect all the cables altogether. So I have no cables connected to my surface. This is just the video signal so that you're able to see that. And I'm going to do the Kenwood D710G. Now, this works the same on the 710G, or the D74 as it does as the new D75. So this radio is one, I'll go ahead and turn it on. This was the first radio as my old call sign as it just kind of quickly went over the screen there. This was the first handheld that I purchased when I got my license. And you might be thinking, like, why would you buy such a high-end radio to get started? Well, I looked at all the specs and I was like, this has pretty much everything. And it's been amazing radio to be able to use all this time. So I'm going to do some packet now completely wirelessly. So I'm going to do this via Bluetooth. So if I go into the menu here and I go down and over, let me actually zoom in a little bit closer so you can see the screen a little bit better on this. Zoom in. So I mentioned that when you're doing many of these radios, you need to go in and make sure that your settings are all set to the correct thing. So if I come down here and I find the interface options, I can see now that my USB function, I'm not going to use the USB port on here, but my PC out for the GPS, my APRS, and really this is the most important one, the KISS port is set to Bluetooth. So all of my TNC, the built-in TNC, is being routed through the Bluetooth connection on this radio. I've also set the DVR also to Bluetooth. So I'm going to go back from that, and I'm going to go up to the Bluetooth settings. Now, on this can be really confusing on many of these radios. The Bluetooth stack inside of the Kenwoods is actually a really old version of Bluetooth. And so it's a little tricky to kind of see how this works, but this is what it's doing. What you want to do is first make sure that Bluetooth is turned on. You want to initiate the connection from Windows. So you go into your Bluetooth settings and say connect to a radio, and you're going to go to the pairing mode initially, and you'll establish the pairing. And this you want to pair as just a regular audio device. So it's working kind of like just a little microphone and speaker that's on there. Once you get it paired, you'll see it connect, and then it'll drop the connection. And you're like, what the heck is going on? I can't get this connection to work. And that's because the way that this works, what you do is you come down here to auto connect, turn your auto connect feature on. Let me go one more past that so it doesn't show on there because it's always at the bottom. So this says auto connect, and you want to turn your auto connect on. That way, when you start doing your Winlink session, it'll automatically connect via Bluetooth to the radio. And that's all of the settings that you need to have inside of here. Let me go back out a couple of levels. I'm going to go all the way back out to the main menu. And now we're sitting here on the Kenwood. You need to make sure that you're using your data connection on the B side of the radio. So here's my toggle for my A-B side. The TNC only works on the B side of the radio. So if you're having more trouble, try changing over to the other side of your radio. Now we're here on the B side of the radio, and I need to turn the TNC on. So I press function and the 5 button. And notice I've got APRS 12 and beacon. It's not the one I want. I press it again, function and 5. And now I see KISS 12 that's sit up here on the radio. So the radio is sitting here ready to go. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to switch back over to my Surface. And this time, instead of connecting via VARA, we're going to do this via Packet. So I'm going to close that window, and that closes all that. I'm going to click the drop down here, and I change it to Packet Winlink, open session. And all of my settings are actually set up in here. If I go into the settings section, you can see that I've got the packet TNC set to the KISS port. And with that, I've got the correct COM port set. I know the serial port baud rate for this particular radio is 9600 baud. It's set to normal. I've got this all set down to 1200 baud because I know that KISS 12 means the 1200 baud rate on that. And I'm just going to hit update. So that now I'm actually just going to connect directly from Winlink straight to my radio. So let me zoom back out a little bit so you can see both the laptop and the radio all in the same frame once I get this started. And I'm just going to hit start. I've got the frequency set up, and you'll notice if I switch back over here, this just turned on the Bluetooth connection, and it established the connection to the radio. It should have anyway. So sometimes this happens. So initially I hit start, it made the connection over, but notice what happened. My TNC turned off. Once you do that Bluetooth connection, sometimes it'll turn the TNC off. So just hit function 5, function 5. It turns the TNC back on, and now I'll hit start again. And if the demo gods are with me this time, there we go. We're getting the connection. It starts talking to the radio completely wirelessly, and it is doing the transmission back and forth. You can see here, it's got that connection that's going on. I'll hold this up to here, so you hopefully can hear that coming out of the audio. Let me say original sound. And look, there's some messages coming in. I'll go ahead and download those, and it's going to download these over Packet as it's coming back and forth. And we obviously don't have to sit here and watch a packet transmission working in real time. So with that, what I'd like to do is go over to David, W0DHG, because I know he's got a bunch of demos also. Sorry, this is going to be a little bit of a long show that we've got. So David, why don't you take it away and talk about the Signalink?
All right, I'll talk about the Signalink, and I'll do it briefly because I don't want to keep everybody long, and I know there's a lot of questions for the after show. So when we talk about the Signalink, I'm going to pop over here to the demo table here. Chris went over some of the stuff around the Signalink. So the Signalink, the awesome part about a Signalink is they make a cable for pretty much any radio out there, and all you need to do for your specific radio is you're going to connect it into this RJ45 type connector. And the nice thing about the Signalink is it's a sound card. It's a USB sound card. And inside, as Chris mentioned before, it's all about the jumpers. There's a jumper for the speaker. There's a jumper for the microphone. There's a jumper for the push to talk. And they'll give you a handy guide to say which one of these do you need to jumper to get you connected into the device properly. You hook it up to the cable, and everything will work great. It's a very standardized setup. The nice thing is you can build your own cables if you want, and I've built my own cables for some of these, or you can buy them, and the cables typically cost between $12 and $20, depending on which radio and the connector that they have on it. It makes it quick and easy. All of the setup, all of the adjustments you can do right here from the front panel, so it's very easy to deal with. You don't have to worry about opening it up and turning a pod or making an adjustment in here. Mostly you don't have to even worry about the Windows sound settings. You can do everything right here from the Signalink. I like it. It's easy. It's a really great first way to get into either the packet or the VARA and the FM side. Works really well and easy. So I'm going to demonstrate for you a couple different radios. I've got my my device set up here, and for this particular one, it's set up for a lot of different radios that I own personally. This one is set up internally jumpered for a 6-pin mini DIN, which means you can use it for pretty much any of the Yaesu mobile or HF radios, as well as the Kenwoods that have that 6-pin mini DIN on the back. But the nice thing about it is it's the same jumper for your standard Kenwood HT type connector. And you can see this connector, and this is the one that Tigertronic sells. On the back here, you see it's got the RJ45 connector on there. It's a nice cable. It's well made. And because I have this and I don't have to rejumper it, I can use the Signalink for any of the mobile, again, Yaesu or HF radios that I have by plugging into the back with a specific cable for that. Or I can take it out, just plug this cable in. I don't need to make any changes on the jumpers on the inside. Plug it into any of the handhelds that are compatible with that Kenwood style connector. And I've got a couple of the radios here to show and demonstrate for you. I've got my favorite here. This is a Woshan dual band. I think this is a KGU 8D. I really like this radio. It's gone through a lot. I've had this for years. It's super reliable. This is actually the radio that I carry with the Signalink, with this cable. It's field Winlink setup that I will use whenever I need it. The great thing about using a setup like this is because it's on a handheld and it's only 5 watts, the battery life on these are really great. And I can set this up in the field if I need a portable Winlink, either a station or a relay gateway. I can get this up on the air and turn it on, set it and forget it. And it'll run for a long time on just the battery that comes with the radio. In addition to that, the same cable's going to work on a couple other radios I have here to demo for you. I've got the Anytone. This is the 878. It works great with that one. And again, it takes a little while to boot this one up. But in addition to that, here, this new Kaohsiung, which is a really popular radio that just came out that has some ability to download software onto it and different firmware. This one works well as well. So let's get into a demo on this real quick for you. I'm going to pop over here and share my screen with you. So I'm on my laptop. The laptop's connected up here. I'm going to demo this with you with my Anytone radio here. I'm going to connect the connector to it, and again, it's that standard Kenwood type connector. Wish it would take focus, but we'll work with it there. And as you can see on the laptop here, it's all ready to go. I'm going to start my connection here. Now I've got the laptop set up to prompt to see if there is any traffic before I just go start downloading stuff willy-nilly. And you can see it's making the connection via that handheld. And it may not be the greatest connection here. I'm going to change the orientation of the HT to see if I can get a little bit of a better signal. And it's prompting me. I have a couple of messages come in, and I'll go ahead and just download that one check message. And yeah, we're going through a couple of stories of my house here, as well as it's the antennas on the outside or on the other side. So it may not be the best connection, but you can see with an HT, you can make the connection and it is functional, right? Any of the handhelds you have that uses that Kenwood connector would work. Your Baofengs would work. Obviously, a Kenwood handheld will work. You don't need to make a lot of changes on the radio. You do need to make sure that the squelch is set on low. And typically you might want to play with the volume, but at least I usually set it starting at about halfway up and get the volume going. This is a great way to set up a field station or low power station, one that you can rely on that isn't going to take a lot of juice. You don't have to worry about powering your mobile radio. Keep a couple of extra HT batteries charged and you should be good to go. I think that's it for now, Chris. We went a little long. Is there anything else you wanted me to demo from here?
I guess the only other thing on the Signalink, since you've got it there, one of the real advantages that we do have on the Signalink that's different from the Digirig are those the pots on the front, the connectors. Absolutely. To be able to show what those settings are, because we showed that on the.
Let me see if I can get it to focus for you properly and get a good close up of this. So, the nice thing about the Signalink. Let's see. Can you see that all right? Let's see if it'll focus.
Close enough.
So much for the demo gods, right?
Yeah, right.
All right. So there's 3 pots you get on the front of the Signalink. There's the delay, and we're always going to set the delay all the way down in the off position. There's a transmit level and a receive level, and it really allows you to kind of adjust for your specific radio or a bunch of different radios. Again, because the way I use this is I'll move this from device to device, and I might need to make some adjustments as I go along. But you can use this to adjust what you're seeing on from a power perspective. And let's see if I can flip over here so you can see my connection. And I'm going to actually plug this into one of the different radios here and get you to see a signal.
While he's doing that, I ended up using, I have one of those Quanshens also. And when I was having trouble getting the Baofeng working, I switched over to using the Quanshen because the signal level out of this radio is so much better than what was coming out of the Baofeng. It was really remarkable to see the audio quality that was coming out of this little radio compared to the Baofeng. And these are literally only about $10 more. You can pick up a Baofeng UV5R for about $20, and these Quanshens are about $30. So it's for your $10, this is a much better radio. We've just started picking these up after Dan made some suggestions for us to give those a try.
Yeah, and I think I'll throw it back to you for I think we'll call it a day for the demo gods on this one.
Okay, sounds good. Let's kick it over to Dan, NR6V, as soon as I find him again. There he is. And Dan, you've got some demos for us as well.
I do, and I'll make it brief, but we've been talking about the Quansheng radio. There are a couple of variations of it, but as Chris said, this in almost every way is a better radio than the Baofeng for about the same price. Real popular. The cool thing about it is that the chipset in it is very broadband. And because of that, there are guys writing alternate firmware for it that will allow you to do a whole lot of different things. And that's not the point of the show today, but if you do a search, you'll see that. But anyway, I'm using the Masters Communications DRA board, and I'm using the DRA 39, which is kind of a unique card for them. It actually mimics a Signalink. You can see there that it has the jumpers like the Signalink, and it has an audio jack. So you can use it just like a Signalink. And that gives you a lot of flexibility with this. And these boards are available in kit form. It's kind of a fun kit to build. I'm not a real expert kit builder. So it was challenging, but doable. And you save yourself a little bit of money by doing that. They have a variety of different kits. Somebody had posted in chat that it was confusing, and it is a little confusing because they have so many versions. Basically, they have two basic versions. They have a standard and a boosted amplification version that some radios require. Most do not. And then they have different versions with different connectors. I don't believe they sell any cables, but they do work with the standard cables. So anyway, the thing about this is a variety of cables available for it because that uses the Signalink cables. With a caveat, I tried to set this up with my Yaesu FT60 and a Signalink cable. And what I found on the Yaesu radios is they require a resistor. I believe it's a 2K resistor in the line. Signalink does this by having you add it into the jumper pad, whereas Digirig runs it in the cable. So you've got to make sure you've got the right cable. But let's go ahead and just show you a demo of this. You should be seeing on my screen now my my setup for Winlink, and it's set up through the DRA board. And we'll see if we can connect. Like the other guys, I've got a couple of messages waiting. I'm going to deselect those so we don't have to go through the trouble of downloading them. But you can see I've got a pretty good signal. Then again, I'm connecting to my own gateway, so it's not surprising. And that's it. It works really well. I've got the cover taken off this, but it comes in a nice case. Really, I think I'm a fan of the Digirig for handhelds because it's so compact and it just goes right along with it. But this is another option. It's a really good quality board. A little bit more money than a Digirig at about $90 built, but cheaper than a Signalink. And again, it's just another option to put in your kit to get done. But it's very doable with a handheld, and took me a little while to get it set up. But once I did it, again, I tried with a Baofeng first and had some issues, so I went to the Quansheng, and it just worked right away. The same thing Chris talked about, though. Squelch has to be set to 0, and you use your volume control knob to you can, if I go back to the upper screen here, you'll see on the VARA, as I adjust the volume, that level will change, so you can easily adjust that. But that's one of the things that you have to make sure you have set. And that's all I've got, Chris. I was going to demonstrate my Yaesu with a Digirig, but the cable didn't come on time. It'll probably arrive 10 minutes from now.
Right, no kidding. Hey, thanks a lot, Dan. Great walkthrough for that. One of the things that when you start kind of thinking about this whole idea of I'm going to send Winlink with my HT radio, and you start really thinking about the cables that you need to go from your computer into your interface. You need to pick up that interface, and then you need the cables that go from the interface over to your radio. While this might add as little as maybe about $100, sometimes it can add $100 or more, or several $100s to the overall cost of what your setup is. So when you start thinking about that, you got a low end radio, and you're going to have a lot of trouble. It took me hours yesterday to use the exact same setup that I set up for that ordering a pizza video with a Baofeng. Literally, that radio, those cables, that setup has been sitting inside of a little small bag since I did that video. But when I took it all out today and I tried to reconfigure it, all of my Windows settings had changed, and it took me hours and hours to really troubleshoot and get that particular setup back up and running again. So one of the lessons learned here is, first of all, really practice with your gear. Make sure you're getting it out. You're working through making sure all of your equipment works as you expected before you go out in the field. Because when you're out in the field, that's not the time to try and figure out what your audio settings have changed, what Windows update has run that screwed things up and it's not working right. You want to do that beforehand. The other lesson learned is you get what you pay for. I mean, you saw me use the Icom 705 and all of the higher end handhelds, the top end models that come from Yaesu, Kenwood, Icom. All of those work literally that easily. Once you get the cable, you connect it from the radio to your laptop, or you do it wirelessly, it really just works. The next tier down of radios between each of those different manufacturers is a very similar experience. But when you start going with the lower end radios that you've got out there, or even your base model that you're getting started with, you can end up spending a lot of extra time and a lot of extra heartache in order to try and get that radio and your computer to talk. And you really have to do a cost-benefit analysis of the total cost of ownership and your overall experience. If you're somebody who likes fiddling with all this stuff, great, have at it. But sometimes it might be worth thinking through the overall purchase that you're going to make if you're going to do a purpose-built system. With that, let's jump back in and have a look at the rest of the check-ins, and we'll bring up the map of those. So I'm back into my Telnet settings here. I'm going to hit start. So if you hadn't had a chance to send in your Winlink check-in, go ahead and send that in now. I'm going to do a couple of more checks and make sure that we've gotten all of the check-ins that have come in. I'm going to go ahead. It looks like we've, yeah.
Yeah. While you're doing that, I have something to talk about.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Hey, hop in there, Scott.
Yeah. So, these guys showed for HTs. So next week, or when we talk about base units and mobiles, I'm using the DRA50 board by Master Communication, and it works really well behind my Alinco and my Yaesu FT897. It just works. Or I'm still trying to fiddle with the Digirig to make it work.
Yeah, right. The thing that I love about the Digirig is you get one Digirig and then you just get a bunch of different cables and it works between a bunch of different radios. And that is super awesome. It makes it very easy to swap around between a bunch of the different radios. So I'm going to do one last check of the check-ins to see that we've gotten everybody. It looks like all of them have come in. So I'm going to come up here to the toolbar. I'm going to hit the little map icon, and I've got selected. I've got the Winlink check-in V5. That's the current form that has all of the check-ins on it. And if you'd like to see how the mapping works on your system, go ahead and click the drop down and select messages. It'll bring up a map of all of your traffic that's coming to your copy of Winlink. But since I've received all of these messages, I'm going to come down to the bottom. I'm going to hit display map, and I'm going to blow that out to full screen. Now, when you look at this map, these are all the check-ins that have just come in to us from all around the world. And you'll see a couple of the check-ins that are located up here that have these the kind of purple color on them, K7 CGA, N7 RGS. This one over here, this is KE0 CBV. Next one up here, KA5 NHU. And this one, I might have to zoom in to be able to make sure I get it. Looks like KD8 UJG. All of those check-ins were all sent via HF communication. So those came in via HF. Now, how did I do that? If you come up here to the set filters option, you can see the, you can select various different things off of the form, and I've got the band selected, and you can see I've changed the color to purple, and initially I had that set to HF. If I change the drop down, this shows me all the different options that are there. I'm going to say VHF. And now when I hit save, you'll see those purple pins all change. Now, these are all stations that sent in their Winlink check-in via VHF, via RF. And so it's a great little feature, filter feature that you can do right here on the map. I'm going to roll over and check all of these check-ins now real quick. So this is Terry, Z01HOG, sending us check-in in from New Zealand. Hey, thanks a lot for sending us that. This is VK2SKY there in Sydney. Good morning to you there in the Sydney area. Let me zoom in a little bit. We'll come up here, and we've got, look like Franz in Austria, Roland in Germany. We have a station here in Sweden, Sierra Alpha 7, Juliet Mike Foxtrot joining us, and Golf Zero Tango Radio Tango from the UK joining us. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little further, and I'm going to use the right-click mouse button and right-click and drag in order to pan my map over. It looks like we've got Victor Echo 3 Yankee X-ray, and notice that purple pin sent in via VHF RF coming in there. We've got Kilo Bravo 1, Oscar Tango India. I'm going to roll over a lot of these. You can see the stations that have sent in via RF that are showing up here on the map. And just want to make sure that everybody's able to see all of these stations who have sent in your Winlink check-in. You can see that we did get those as they came in. Here's a station here, KD0CSL, sending in via RF for VHF. I think I already rolled over that one. I look like Ed, and who runs one of the Winlink Wednesday groups. Really appreciate him joining in and checking in here on WaveTalkers. And here's KI0KY joining in, sending in via RF in Colorado. And these are great because you can click on this and you can see all the detail that you have here inside of the message just from right here on the map. It's really great to be able to just roll over all of that information. We'll come up here to the Pacific Northwest and we'll see these other stations. It looks like Bill AC7SR sent in via VHF, and let's see what the other station here is. So that's Bill and 7JAJ also sent via RF that came in, and a few more here. Got a couple down here in the San Francisco area. Let me zoom in a little bit now that we're moving into the southwestern United States. Again, right click and drag. We've got Alpha Foxtrot 7 Romeo Mike coming in via VHF, and Kilo Echo 6 Foxtrot India Kilo coming in via RF as well. Pull over these stations here, make sure they're able to see their check-in. Quite a few growing here in the Vegas area. Hey, thanks a lot for all you folks there in the Vegas area sending in your check-ins. It's great to be able to see. And let me zoom into Southern California because we got quite a few more kind of clustered around us right in there. And we'll roll over each of these, make sure folks are seeing that we did get their check-ins there as well. Here's Craig, KJ6IJJ. Craig, by the way, last week during the after party, I think you had already left at this point. Somebody was asking about NTS traffic. Craig is one of the NTS liaisons that we have. So if you're looking for somebody to work with for NTS traffic, he would be call sign KJ6IJJ, India Juliet Juliet, Kilo Juliet 6, India Juliet Juliet is one of the folks who does NTS traffic. So there we are. Hey, let me jump back up into the booth. We'll jump back over here, and there we go. Let me bring the guys back up. If you found all this information helpful, be sure to go on to the YouTube channel and like the video and leave us some comments. Let us know what you learned while we were here doing the show. We really always appreciate being able to hear from everybody. I'm just looking for Dan. There he is. He's over there. Add his spotlight, and we'll bring Scott back up as well. David, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, absolutely. HTs are a great way to give yourself a portable WinLink setup, or a low power or a long lasting, low electricity cost station, or you can set up, a gateway, on a temporary basis. It's easy to do. You can play around with it. Most any of the radios that you can get a connection for, you can run through a Signalink. Dan and Chris showed you some Digirig options. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Try it out, have fun, get it set up, and practice, like we said.
Absolutely. Dan, NR6V, any closing thoughts from you this week?
Well, I think once again, we've sort of done the fire hose technique, but remind folks that you can go and pick up this session on YouTube and pause it, back it up, whatever you need to do. David mentioned batteries. The Baofeng, people love to hate the Baofeng, but one of the things that is really good about it is the batteries have an absolutely incredible shelf life. I've got one in my truck that's just my emergency radio in the truck, and I'll take it out every few months to charge it, and it's still got like 90% charge on it. So that's a good choice from that perspective. These new Quansheng radios are really awesome. And by the way, I don't think we mentioned it, but they have been tested for spectral purity, and they're excellent. One YouTube video compared it to, I think it was the FT5 Yaesu, which is a very good radio, and it equaled or bettered the specs. So for $29, it's a pretty good radio, and one that I wouldn't mind leaving in a pouch with a Digirig for an emergency, kind of grab and go kit. So So far, they've been really good radios. I don't know about battery life, haven't had them long enough, but I suspect they're pretty good.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Hey, Scott, I know you're muted right now. We'll get you unmuted. And any closing thoughts from you today? And what was going on in the chat?
Lots of different things going on in the chat. So all the links that I posted are affiliate links for all the stuff that we talked about today to Amazon, except for Masters Communication, which is not on Amazon. So if you click on any of the links that I sent out, that will take you to an affiliate link for WaveTalkers, and that helps us keep the show going out there. Dan made a really good comment, and all this is a really good time to talk about when it comes to battery life with your HTs. You'll notice in the background, Dan has an HT with a pink or a orange battery case on it. I'll show you mine. Mine is yellow. These are known as clamshells. And what they do is it allows you to run AA batteries in them. Now, that's for a BK radio. Here's one that I got it for an Anytone. It uses 2 lithium batteries that are rechargeable. I can take them out and recharge them, but this gives me the ability to have an extra battery pack out there, and it's inside of a 3D printed case.
Is that for the 18650, Scott?
What's that?
Is that for the 18650 batteries?
Let me open it up and I will show you. So this is, yes, it's for the 18650 batteries. There it is right there. It's the clamshell for an Anytone. They're out there. If you search, and we call them clamshells. That's just a term we call them in the fire service. But it's just an alkaline battery pack that you can get for a lot of your radios out there. And that gives you a lot of portability now when going out in the field, because I don't have to drag a charger with me. I can just grab a handful of AA batteries. Some run off AA's, some run off of the 18650s, and others run off AAA's. So it's a good thing to put into your bag. Now, keep in mind,
if you use the Energizer lithium batteries, those have an incredible shelf life also. And they also work in high temperature, low temperature, better than your typical throwaway batteries.
Now, keep in mind, I know Chris and I experienced this problem in Ventura when using the clamshells on the Kenwood radios. Remember that, Chris?
Yeah.
Some radios, when they get to a certain voltage, stop working. And so some of the Kenwoods on the LMR side or the public safety side don't like clamshells too much. But on the amateur radio side, I mean, I've gotten, believe it or not, on this battery pack for my Anytone, I left it on for 3 days, just sitting, and it kept a charge on it, and it kept working. So, again, work out there and see what you can do.
Thanks a lot, Scott. Now, if you find any of this stuff helpful, consider going on to WaveTalkers. Use the Buy Us a Coffee link. It's another way to help support us and keep the show up and running. We really appreciate it. This was episode number 98. In episode number 99, we're going to be doing a similar thing, but we're going to look at mobile radios. And then when we do episode number 100, we're going to be looking at all HF radios and doing all of your Winlink connections. We are looking to make sure that we can cover probably the 2 of the most popular large HF radios, the Icom 7300 as well as the Yaesu FT 991A. So we're going to walk through all the settings that you're going to need to be able to get that up and running with your Winlink station. And if you ever want to join us here in the after party for the show, be sure to go to wavetalkers.com. At the bottom of every single page, there's a join us link. We send out 1 email every week, and it's got the link to our live audience that's here inside of our Zoom session. So if you're here inside of the Zoom, hang around. We're going to open up the mics, take questions for the after party. If not, if you're out there, please, we'll see you next week. 7-3 to everyone.